Wow, I was I did like 15. I think there was 5.
Wait, did you do all of them? No, we did those.
Yeah, so I got like a 60%. Really good ideas.
Yeah, I did.
Oh, Tantalon. What's the slogan of Tantalon?
Tomorrow's gonna get a fun and then get him without
Yeah. The derivative equation. You have to find the derivative team. That makes sense.
Yeah, a lot of people out.
Yeah. Yeah, they could flip this one or pick one.
Both of these are 126.
Yes.
Okay.
Or you could call it 126 and 126A or something, but they really go together, so.
Sounds good.
Cooper Minutes. AJ Minutes.
Wow. I mostly ignore this one.
All right, there's a couple handouts you'll need to get out during the minute of silence, please. They're under bell work.
Good morning, FHS. Today is Thursday, April 11th, 2024. Would you please join me in a minute of silence?
I wanted to apologize. I didn't have time yesterday to do the mock exam. Can I still do it tonight?
Yeah. You'll just, there's the next, I'm going to talk about it in a minute.
Okay.
It'll work out. You'll just have a lot more to do.
That's fine.
Stand if you are able and join me in the pledge.
The flag of the United States of America,
America,
the republic for which it stands.
one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you and have a great day.
Okay, if you guys just came in, again, there's a couple assignments you need to find in your bag that we'll be using today. First one will be 125. That was the circuit on limits from last class that I told you did not need to do for homework, so that's why I'm giving you some more time. And in just a minute, I will work some questions out on the board, because wherever you stopped at the end of last class, I'm guessing that's probably because you were getting stuck. So I will help you get past that, but I need you to finish that up. The majority of our practice, and I want to talk about this for just a minute, is the two handouts you picked up. and I just decided to number both of those as 126. So it's a circuit called Average Everything, but from past experience, this is one where these question types, they all kind of sound the same, but they can have different approaches. One question might say, find the average rate of change. Another question might say, find the average value. Another question might say, find the average velocity. Another question might say, find the average rate of change, but we're giving you the derivative instead of the function. And knowing what type of calculus to do, or even if it's calculus at all, because sometimes it's a slope formula, you need to differentiate that, because all of these questions, well, not all, but several of these questions will be questions like on your AP exam. So one thing that I did, instead of letting you kind of guess and check and discover what you remembered and kind of help clarify one group at a time, I didn't think that was going to be very efficient today. So I went ahead and printed out this other page. So this is the one that just looks like notes. So let's look at it for just a second. I just want you to know what's up there. So the top half, I gave you some reminders. So in just a few minutes, whenever you get finished with the limit circuit and then you move on, which will be different times for different people, I really feel like you should start by reading the top half of this page. Read what you should do if it says average rate of change from A to B and you have the function. Read what would you do if it was average rate of change from A to B but you had its derivative. Read what should you do if you wanted to know the total value, total height, something like that of a function. What would you do different if it wanted the average value or average height or average velocity, something like that. And then a reminder about what mean value theorem is, when it works, what you're doing, and what Rolle's theorem is, and a reminder that you don't need to know that for your AP exam. If I was you, I would read through those before you start the circuit. That way, when you start the circuit, you can actually try the questions and you've had a little bit of a reminder, and that gives you a better chance at the questions. I want you to try to avoid looking at this notes handout constantly. I want you to read question one and really think about what you should do and not fall back on the notes. Think about it, try it, and then on the questions you absolutely get stuck on, of course, you can look back. But if you're not trying to transfer that stuff to your brain, then this isn't as helpful. You might be able to do these questions, but if you don't know how to start the questions based on what it's asking, you're really missing the mark on that assignment. Then there's some other reminders at the bottom. I think those are probably worth reading too, but those are not necessarily needed for that 126 circuit. So based on the reminders I have typed up, I think you'll be able to finish that one up in class. I guess it kind of depends on how much you have left to do on the limit circuit. Then I will ask you to work on 122 as I've been doing as you've had time. Some of you may not have had any time yet, and that's okay still. I'm still not even asking it to be turned in yet, but if you have class time, you need to be using it on that. So for homework, I know I asked you guys to do the first 30 questions, no calculator, 60 minutes. So if you forgot, or I don't know, you had something come up and you got busy, this is one of the two times that ends up being okay, because in AP Classroom it also has questions 31 through 45, so I can't even really see the data very well until you do questions 31 through 45. I didn't ask you to do those last class because that's like the second section of the AP exam. 15 questions, calculator is allowed or needed or it's just not helpful, but those are calculator questions. And calculator questions you get 3 minutes on average. So 15 questions, 45 minutes, but you do need to have both of those parts done by next class, which would be Tuesday, because this is an A-week. That's going to be important because part of what we're going to do on Tuesday is go over some of the questions, some of the more missed questions that I feel like you should be able to do, especially with a little bit of a reminder. And if you haven't tried them yet, you're going to miss out on that grade. It's not one I can do late credit on because once we start going over it, it's not measuring the same thing anymore. And of course, it's good for you to really put in a good effort because then you have an idea of what your weaknesses are and what type of questions you need to pick up on. So again, by Tuesday, I need you to do this other 45 minutes. And then if you forgot to do the first 60-minute part, you have a little bit more time here. But that's going to be a hard deadline Tuesday morning because, again, after the fact, we're going to go over some of the questions in class. So you're going to think that you're going to recognize them. It's going to be misleading. So that's not the point of the mock exam. Okay, so this is where we probably need to break in a few different directions. So first, I would like us to finish up the circuits limit. So if you finished that last time in class, or you went ahead and did some from homework, even though you didn't have to, you can move on to 126. Otherwise, go ahead and pick up on 125, please. And I would like to try to help out with the earliest questions that you may have. So, it looks like we may have gotten up to like 17 last class, was maybe the last one I worked on the board. So, is anybody stuck on questions 18 or 19 or 20? Any of those that I could help with? Yeah, 19? Okay. Is this what you have as 19? Just to be sure? Okay. All right, and to me, this was the hardest one. So if you have not made it to question 19 yet, you probably should jump here, although I will record it, so I guess you could watch it later. So. All right, so 19 wants to know what's the limit as n approaches 10 from the left. That's what this little negative sign means. So you really need to think of this a number slightly less than 10, like 9.9999, etc. So if I try to do direct substitution, if I take a number that's almost 10 and square it, then this is almost 100. 100 subtract a number that's almost 100 means that all of this is almost 0. And then I think the most reasonable way to finish this question is to think about a logarithm graph. Whether it's log base 2 of x, log base 3 of x, log base 5 of x, log base e of x, as x approaches, or as you're trying to find the value of 0, this is heading down towards negative infinity. So you need to kind of plug in a number, think of it just a tiny bit less than 10 so that you can see that stuff inside the logarithm is getting close to 0. But after that, if you don't remember what a natural log or any log graph looks like, then I don't know, then it's pretty tough to think about. So that would be my approach. Okay. Anybody else for 17 or 18 before I ask for questions past that? Okay. Now, if you just haven't gotten some of these questions yet, that's okay, because, again, I'll record them. And if somebody asks, then it'll be there. So what about number 20 or 21? 21? Okay. So is your 21 this guy? Now, I will say that there's a pretty common mistake that I saw between y'all's class and my other calculus class in this question that I think is going to be a pretty easy fix. But there's multiple ways to do this question. Again, you always need to start with direct substitution, like I almost made that mistake on number 1. But if I plug in 0, I get sine of pi over 6 minus sine of pi over 6 over 0. And since it's an indeterminate form, that tells me what kind of approach I need to take. Now, you might be tempted to try to distribute this sign, but you need to remember that this is not sine times this stuff. It's sine of this stuff. So distributing does not make sense here. I think the way that most people did it was L'Hopital's rule. But again, this is where there was a very common mistake. So the derivative of sine of something would be cosine of the something. No chain rule needed there. The derivative of the inside is 1. And then right here, this is where the mistakes were. Sine of pi over 6 is just a number. It's just a constant. And the derivative of a constant should be 0. So that whole thing goes to 0. And then the derivative of the denominator becomes 1. Plug 0 into what's left over, and your answer is going to come from cosine of pi over 6, which you have to know unit circle here. That would be square root of 3 over 2. So I think L'Hopital's rule is probably the easiest, but again, two things. You've got to be careful not to use chain rule on the left because it's not needed. And on the top right, that's just a number. The derivative of a number is going to be 0. So a lot of people were just keeping this like sine of pi over 6 and then having issues. Okay, the other way you could do this, and I feel like this is a little bit more of a stretch, but for some people it might be easier, so let me point this out. This, which we will review again before your AP exam, is one of the two definitions of a derivative. This is the limit as h approaches 0 of f of x plus h minus f of x all over h. This is where the idea of a derivative was defined before we learned the shortcuts on how to find a derivative. The reason why that might be helpful to you, if this is f of x plus h, it could tell you that f of x is sine. All of this tells you that you want to know the derivative. And the fact that they're plugging in pi over 6 for x means they want to know the derivative at pi over 6, which gives you cosine of pi over 6, which is also square root of 3 over 2. So if you recognize that as the definition of a derivative, you should be able to see the function, know that it's asking you to take the derivative, and see that they're wanting you to plug in pi over 6, and you could come out with the same answer. So just whichever method you prefer. All right, was there anybody else for number 20?
Can you do 20?
Sure. 20 is, I have this as 20. Is this your 20?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so 20 would be pretty straightforward, except it has these absolute values. And I'm going to suggest that we ignore them for just a second, and let's just try to work this like we normally would. So I could factor the denominator by taking out a GCF. Now, here's where it gets kind of interesting, and this is what makes this question unique. This is an x minus 5, and this is an x minus 5. So these two cancel, kind of. They're not exactly the same thing, but you can kind of think of them as canceling. But you got to think about the numerator. Since it's absolute value, that's always going to be positive. And since the whole numerator is being canceled out, that would leave a positive 1. Just like when you reduce 2 over 4 to 1/2. When the numerator all goes away, it doesn't go to 0, it goes to 1. But your denominator, if I'm plugging in a number from the left of 5, again, you need to think of that as a number slightly less than 5, like 4.99. And when I plug that in here, 4.99 minus 5 ends up being negative. I'll say negative 1 because I'm going to think of these two canceled out. So in the end, your numerator had a 1, your denominator had a 3, but your numerator had to be positive because of the absolute value sign, and your denominator had to be negative because you were plugging in a number less than 5 and taking away 5. So in the end, that's where negative 1/3 should come from. So this absolute value is your hint. You need to think about the signs. Absolute value, positive. 5 from the left here would be negative. Positive divided by negative is negative. Otherwise, it's just canceling these out and having 1/3. Okay, what about, I know there's not many more in this, 21 or 22? I feel like 22 is a pretty, oh, we already did 21, didn't we? 22, 23, or 24? Any of the last questions? I'm glad you asked that one because this is a very rare question here. This is your 22. Okay, so the interesting thing about question 22 is this is the one time where that first direct substitution rule breaks. The first thing you should always be trying is try to do direct substitution, and if you end up with a number not in indeterminate form, you can assume that's your answer. But there are rare cases where that's not really the real answer. And for you to understand why direct substitution doesn't work in this question, you probably need to think of this graph. The square root of x looks like this. The square root of x minus 3 would just be shifted right 3. And so if we think about this from a visual standpoint, from the right he approaches 0, but from the left he doesn't even exist. And if the limit from the left doesn't equal the limit from the right, then the limit does not exist. So this one did not exist because it didn't exist from the left, which was how one of your answers was described. So that's pretty tricky because, again, 99% of the time you just plug it in, and if you don't get indeterminate form, you can assume that's your answer. But this one is that rare case where that doesn't work. Think about it graphically. From the right it's 0, but from the left it doesn't exist. If the limit from the left and the right are not the same, then the limit does not exist. Unless it's specifically said from the right or left. That's a pretty tricky one. I don't think they put that on your AP test, but you really should know what that kind of graph looks like, so hopefully you would still catch that. If they did. Okay, so I guess that leaves 23 or 24. Either of those two.
You need 24.
24, okay. Is this your 24? Better set this down before I knock it over. Okay, I see a couple different ways to go about this one. So, of course, direct substitution first. You get 0 over 0. Obviously, you need to know the unit circle there. I know tangent values are a little bit harder, but slow down and be careful about that. I would say the most common way I saw yesterday and the day before that you guys worked this was with L'Hopital's rule. The derivative of this would be 9 secant squared. And the derivative of this would be 3 cosine x. You do need to remember those trig derivatives. The derivative of tangent being secant squared is a very common one. Now that I've applied L'Hopital's rule once, I could try to do direct substitution. And again, you got to be very careful here. This is like 1 over cosine squared. Cosine of 0 is 1, so this is like 1 over 1 squared. Or 1. This is like 3 times 1, so you end up with 9 over 3 or 3. 3 would be my final answer. The other option, which you may think is easier, although again you should be able to do derivatives anyway, so I think L'Hopital's rule makes more sense. But because it is in indeterminate form, you could have made this look different. Instead of saying 9 tangent x, you could say 9 sine divided by cosine. Tangent is sine divided by cosine. And then instead of dividing, I could multiply by the reciprocal. That's how you divide fractions. Then you could get the signs to cancel. You could get 3 to go into 9 3 times. You could plug this in, and you would get 3 over the cosine of 0, which is 3 over 1, which is 3. So, thinking of tangent as sine over cosine, and then carefully dividing those fractions by multiplying by the reciprocal also works. So, you have options there. Okay, I know that was the last one for the circuit, but Let me offer one more time any of the other questions that we skipped, because I started at a specific number, but some people may not have been quite that far yet. Is there any others that you've tried that you know you need help with that I could help on? Yeah.
23.
23? Uh-huh. Okay. This one? Okay. All right. So with this one, if I try to plug in infinity here, I can see the numerator goes to infinity. If I plug in infinity here, I don't know, it doesn't take me too much thought there to see that that goes to infinity. But infinity over infinity is one of the indeterminate forms. So that means L'Hopital's rule works. Now, you can do L'Hopital's rule, but first off, you might want to FOIL these together to get 4w to the fourth plus 7 minus 2 plus 5. So you could FOIL those to make it look like that. But if you do L'Hopital's rule, you're going to have to do it once to get these both down to a third degree. Then you're going to have to do L'Hopital's rule a second time. It's still going to be infinity over infinity. Then a second time to get them both down to a second degree. It's still going to be infinity over infinity. You can do L'Hopital's rule a third time to get it down to a third degree. Still going to be infinity over infinity. And then finally, if you do it a fourth time and reduce your fraction, L'Hopital's rule will work. So it'll work, but it's a real pain. Really, what you should be aiming for here is, because this is approaching infinity or negative infinity, and this is one big fraction, you should just be trying to apply your horizontal asymptote rules. If the degree of the numerator is bigger, it's going to infinity or negative infinity. You have to put more thought into it. If the degree of the denominator is bigger, it would be approaching 0. But if the degrees are equal, it's leading coefficient over leading coefficient. So 3/4. But you have to remember that connection to know that. Horizontal asymptotes are trying to tell you what's happening at the ends of the graph. Like as x or w gets really big. That's the far right of the graph. So that's why the horizontal asymptote rules apply there. Okay, is that enough for that one? Okay, anybody else? One more? Okay, then I guess if you don't have that one finished, that is one of the 2 assignments I'm going to ask you to turn in as part of your homework. So 124 was from last class. It should already be finished unless you were absent. Well, even if you're absent, you should have it made up by now. But those are the 2 that I need turned in by Tuesday. If you want to take a second, just turn them in so you don't have to worry about it, then that's fine too. But it sounds like most of you, if you haven't moved on to 126 yet, then you should. So again, instead of just diving into the circuit, I really feel like you should read the top half of this, try to let some of that sink in, then try the circuit and see where you stumble, get confused, etc. And then use the notes as a resource, but don't try to use the notes as a crutch. Don't try to look at it every single question. Try to go off memory, and when you need to refer to it, that's fine, but try to remember it and try to get it to stick, so you maybe have to look at it less and less as you work through the questions. So that would be the main thing I'd like you guys to work on. So let me give a couple minutes for everyone to get started on that, and then I will come around. When you finish that, again, I really feel like you should be able to finish that one in class with the reminders I gave you, because even when you get stumped, take a minute to look at your notes, try to absorb the information, but you've got some quick help there. So I think you'll be able to finish 126 in class, and then if you would do some of 122. 122 is not going to be homework. I'll give you more time before that. The homework needs to be the mock exam, because that is, we all got to be on the same page there at that time. So that's the only reason there's no mini quiz next class. The only reason I'm not asking you to finish 122 for homework. So please make sure that you do that. And if you forgot the first 30 questions, 60 minutes, 30 minutes, 30 questions, 60 minutes. Just make sure that you're all the way caught up by Tuesday, because that will be the due date for the participation points. No late credit on it, just the nature of what it is. And you guys have the whole Friday, Monday, Tuesday, or Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday before it's got to be done. Also, there's Atlas testing next week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, so that doesn't mess up classes. That's where we'll do advisory in the morning for an hour and a half. But I know a lot of you guys don't have to do that, so you'll probably either be at home or you'll be in an advisory class. But nonetheless, that's still a chunk more time than you would normally have that you could work on that. So, all right. Before I shut up here, any questions about the agenda today or any questions about the mock exam homework piece? Yeah.
What does it do?
The multiple choice part is due before class on Tuesday. The free response part I will assign next week. I haven't even assigned it in AP Classroom yet, but you need to have the 30 no calculator done and the 15 calculator done. And again, you do need to do that with Fidelity. AP Classroom shows me how long you spent per question. So if you do 45-minute section in 10 minutes, I'm not giving you the participation grade. You need to try to get real feedback for yourself. And again, I would prefer you do it in one 45-minute sit down, but if you just can't make that work, that's fine. Do 30 minutes one time, do another 15 minutes another time, but keep up with your time so it's as accurate as possible. Yes?
I accidentally misread the assignment. I did all 45 in 1 hour last night.
Okay.
What would you like me to do?
Nothing. It's just that, I mean, you just made it harder on yourself. Did you feel super rushed to try to do them all in?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so you really should have had an extra 45 minutes for the last 15 questions. Did you use a calculator on the end?
Yeah, because I understood the sub one definitely needed a calculator.
Yeah, it has like a little symbol on the questions too to remind you. Okay, well that part's at least good, but I mean, you'll just have to take that with a grain of salt, like when you see how many you got right or whatever, so. Okay, so let me give you a few minutes to get a few questions in, and I'll come around and try to figure out where to fill in the gaps here.
Yeah, I didn't get it yet. You don't know how to do it? Yeah. And so you have to set that equal. Did you want to have? Yeah. And you set that equal to the slope. The slope. So you just plug in. So the slope would be like y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. You have to plug in like -2 into square root of x plus 2. Does that make sense? Not really. I can show you. So I just do that and then. A little solo, yes. From here. Straight up and down. Then you're trying to solve for x, right? How do you get this out?
Just square the
Okay.
square one, square two.
Okay. You can square this out. Okay.
mean value theorem says that at some instant derivative is equal to that average. So now you need to set this equal to the slope function of the f of whatever minus f of -2 over 0 minus 2. Again, when you, that all you do is equation to solve.
Shoot -2 through 2. Shoot. Spread over. So spread over -2. Oh, okay.
Yes, I think it's just maybe right here. I think go from here to here. No, I mean from here to here. Oh, well, that's, you can't do that, you gotta do it the other way. You need to square both. You gotta square both sides first. Because you can't divide by 2, because this isn't 2, it's the square root of 2. So that's a big difference. So square both sides, which gets rid of the square root, because 1 squared is equal to 1. Then divide by 2. Okay. And then you can multiply both sides by 2.
So you got -2 times.
Yes.
And you follow order.
Equals 1.
Okay, so should that really correct?
I think I divided by 2, like, well, way back here, I just multiplied both sides by 2, so we got rid of this 2 and this 2, and just made it 11. Oh, we're almost there now. So this equals subtract 4 and divide 2. So you wait, subtract 4.
Then wait, but then doesn't actually
So this rolls down.
what was the answer, John?
Maybe subtracted that over. Okay.
Okay.
This. So when you square this side, x becomes x squared, 2 becomes 4, and the square root of x plus 10 times the square root of x plus 10 will be x plus 10. Okay, and then you just distribute it. Okay, that's definitely not the way I approached it, but that's okay. I think they're still okay. I think it's fine. Yeah, so I think we were probably, our work probably looked the same about right here. I understand why you moved one of these over. But I just added these together with the common denominator. And since it's said equal to 0, that's nice, because the only time a fraction is going to equal 0 is when the numerator equals 0. So that just simplified my life a little bit. So, I don't know, if I was you, I'd stick it through and see if you come up with that as an answer, but if not, you might try it. Still okay? You're good? You need any other parts or anything? I will also tell you, when I did this one the other day, there was one question I never figured out, so when you finish, I want to see how you did one of these. There's just one question that I couldn't find the answer for, and I'm pretty sure I did it right. It is
But I'm 29, so I'm missing
on the back
something
page.
there.
And it's not even the hardest question or anything. Either I'm just totally overlooking something basic, or there's a mistake on their circuit.
Oh, it's not average rate of change. Yeah.
Whatever this is. I don't know. It's a question. Yeah, but we don't know what.
Well, you have five.
On 3, number 2.
Oh, it's a lot.
Yeah, but like it's yours. Don't tell my dog.
Number 2 is so easy. It's so
No, it's just a negative,
so it's mean value theorem. So you have to
negative
set the
R
derivative of g of x
because it's rise over R.
equal
Yep.
to
Negative 5.
the slope of g of x.
Isn't that it?
Right. Right.
Hold on, is that
So
3 over
get the
2?
derivative of g of x.
Oh, 1 over 2, okay, so 1 over 2.
Right equal sign.
Okay, that looks fine. This looks fine. I just moved this to my denominator because it has a negative exponent, so that's where I got this. Okay, so that would be the instantaneous rate of change, the derivative. And then you need to set it equal to the average rate of change. And that ended up being square root of 2 over 2. You got that? Okay, and then, so then you need to solve from there. I just cross multiplied, I think. Like I did these two to get this, and did these two to get this, and then solved this finally. So you're still on the right track, but you just gotta finish it. Should be negative 3 over 2. So if you don't end up with that after a few minutes, call me back and we'll figure it out.
The slope from 0 to 2, or from negative 2 to 2. So you gotta like plug in 0 and plug in the offset. Yeah.
Yeah, negative.
Does that make sense?
Yeah,
And then we just solve the.
Wait, the answer is negative 5.
Number 2 is negative 3 half. Top right.
We did use that. Right.
Oh, I have that.
Yeah. Yeah, that one was wrong.
Okay, what'd you do for number 1?
It's number, which one?
Number 1 I got.
Number 2.
Number 1 should be
1 and 2
first.
are.
Yeah.
Well, yeah,
You need to check that again.
I just
Looks like your process is right. Number 1 should be 2. Number 2 should be negative 3 half. Okay, have y'all tried number 3 yet?
Yeah. I have one.
Okay, did you get it? 7?
Good.
Oh wow, you're in number 7.
I got number 6.
Number 5.
Almost 3.
Oh,
Negative 10.
hold on. I skipped. I went from 1 to 3, not 1, 2, 3, 4. All my numbers are mixed up.
Okay, okay, that's fine.
Quick, sorry.
No, it's fine. I was just trying to help you, get corrected and start off.
Thank you.
So velocity is
So the application is in the right spot, and
So how far
that is
to travel
correct.
if you want to teach.
Wait, then why is this wrong?
Did you do it correctly?
In other words, what's the slope of the?
I don't know which
Well, I think it's what,
one.
number,
I mean, it might be fine. I just thought about if it's at 1, 3, and the slope is at least 2,
what is that?
that means by 2 it's gotta be at least 5.
Divided by.
And at 3 it's gotta be at least 7, and at 4 it's gotta be.
Are you serious?
So I just did.
One of them might be wrong. And by that I mean like the answers, you might have got all of them right. But I'll just-
Did you get it right?
Okay, then I'll.
Or you want me to check, make sure you're in the right spot?
Ask him. See if you got all of them.
It is set up correctly, although I really want you to put a dx there. What's the derivative of 1?
Well, physics, you don't set the
Derivative
Physics
is
1
1
or
but you were
First time I took physics, I think it's like C or 3 or whatever. Essentially, it's so tough.
What did you do?
So this is the integral. Yeah.
You don't have a 1.
Oh, yeah.
So then you take physics
Over
plus
C,
or whatever.
plus C, but they
You
plus
do?
So you take the
Wait,
integral.
there's 1, 2, and then C.
With one.
It definitely. But it says 2 from 2, 0
Oh, you're right.
Two. That's your derivative, so I got the same thing, I just moved mine down to the denominator. For your slope, it looks like you still need to plug in these values. So plugging in, I got this, which reduced to just being square root of 2 over 2. So you still need to do that and get square root of 2 over 2. And then set them equal to each other. And in the end, if you don't end up with negative 3 halves, call me back and you know.
Which one didn't you get on that? Wait, can I see?
I'm not gonna tell you. Finish the whole thing.
Oh my gosh. This is the negative.
Let me see what you got.
I don't know this is. What's the derivative? Is it 2 minus 2 weeks? It is 2 minus 2.
I might ask you about one later. Are you done with the whole thing? This is the one.
That's the one we all like.
We've got different answers.
We use the rate of change formula and got the wrong answers.
Yeah. So did I. What is this? Where'd you come up with this one?
That's the average.
No, this is y value for at 1.
How do you know that?
So it's.
The equation is negative 5 times x plus y.
Yeah, it's constant.
Okay, I think you're right. That's just my approach. But... Okay, so here's what that does. Do we agree that this is linear?
Yeah.
Why can't you just do, so I didn't know this exact point, so I didn't want to use this point. Why can't you just do rise over run?
Well, the average acceleration is fine, so it's just, so asking for the average rate of change.
Yeah, this is,
It's like,
so
I
this
think
is,
from like here to here is not represented.
if it's linear, it should be linear.
it's just
So the slope would be the same, okay, yeah. So, so how do you go from slope to that? How do you divide in half? Would be my question.
I just took the average of these, the average acceleration is the midpoint. The y value. There's negative 5 over 2. Okay, so if f1 is 3, it says the
Okay, yeah, you're right.
least value of the rate of change, like it's at least
So.
2.
Fix that one, all right?
Like the slope's at least 2,
Okay.
from 1 to 4.
Okay.
So you could really just add 2 3 times.
Okay. So you
Does that make sense?
okay, so this is fine. This is okay. But here's the problem. So if you've got a 2x in here, but then when you start plugging in x, these don't simplify. So you see how you, alright, well right here, this is a 3 over 2. That's just the constant, so pull it out too. Pull the 3 over 2 out, I wasn't worried about it.
So
And then integrating 1 over 2 is a lot easier.
And it says the slope's
And then
at
when you
least
plug those
2.
in, those go to nice.
From 1 to 4. It's
So I
at
bet
least
your answer's probably
So it's at
equivalent to
least
this one.
5 at 2, and it's at least 7 at 3, and it's at least 9 at 4. I don't know. That's really dumb. It works. Not dumb, but it feels like it's cheating the system.
So, when x equals 1, y equals,
Yeah, that's pretty smart actually.
so write it down.
So 9 is the least
at
value.
least 2, then when x equals 2, y has to be at least what? That's natural. Plus or the slope, or derivative means slope. So if you go one more to the right, when x is 2, y has to be at least less than 6. It's going up at least 2. So it's at 3. If it goes up 2, so when x is 2, y has to be at least at 5. Because that would be a slope of 8. Okay? So when x is 3, y has to be at least when x is 4, y has to be at least 9. Every one you go to the right, y has to go up at least 2. Every one you go to the right, y has to go up at least 2. Every one you go to the right, y has to be at least 2.
Yes, that's right. I'm needed help on every single one. So,
Did you get that?
what did you do?
I saw some other people do it too, but
What'd you,
I think that, yeah, that's all.
so you just plugged in, so that's what, yeah, that's what I tried to do. But because it's, I guess because it's average value, it's not average rate of change, it's average value. So you have to take, you have to do the, you have to integrate this thing. Well,
That was 6.
you have to integrate this, and then you have to do times 1/3 because it's
That's a 0.
average
What
value.
you're trying to find.
Because it's from, because this is 3, negative 2. I don't know how you would know to do that though. Like, it doesn't seem very. Yeah.
All that.
As well.
I heard you've been struggling over here.
No, I'm doing great.
Do you need to find an acceleration equation and then do it?
Between the height and the average acceleration. Yeah, I think I probably would find acceleration first. Yeah, it's pretty easy to find out. Once you see the acceleration function, the average acceleration will be pretty obvious. I mean, you haven't even done question 5 yet.
I was helping AJ and
I just looked at that one first.
And
Now question 5.
have you done question 5?
Yeah, I have actually.
It sounds like they tricked you.
Yeah, they were just using it.
So, you know where your pass is?
Whitney has it. That's why her name's on the board.
I'll be fast.
You can take your time if you want. The graph will show acceleration and try to find the average.
I know. So I plugged in X.
What is the equation for average value?
You can. Negative 10 or did you just pick subtraction?
Yeah, right? Well, I did that and I got some.
How did you do it?
Yeah, but I
I just counted it.
negative percent, which is.
I mean, yeah, it's.
Fine, fine, fine.
I just did.
Divide by all.
I forgot to check that.
Nice.
Did you figure that one out?
Okay.
I mean, just actually.
It doesn't look ridiculous as it is. And also look at the answers. 67 thirds.
Isn't it?
Well, since it's a fraction equals a fraction, you can just do cross multiply. 1 times 2 gives you 2 equals, and then I can multiply these two.
Did you see your
But I actually multiply both sides by 2 first.
How
So
many
that
do
would
you see in
cancel
your
out this 2
Facebook?
and this 2, to make it a little bit nicer.
This thing we put in the locker room. I'm not.
And so then you would have,
You haven't been to Facebook?
mine looks a little bit different. I think
I know
you
yesterday. So
have 1 over square root of x plus
how do you
2,
go?
and over here you have square root of 2.
Salt.
Well, you could, like I said, you
No,
can cross
I'm not-
multiply, so this times this gives you one side, and this times this gives you one side.
Anyways, your side's good. I think you'll like it.
And then when we multiply these, this is
I did
2 times x and a 2 times 2. You could square both sides to
I
get
just
rid
want
of
you to
the
laugh. I just want you to laugh.
square root. And then now subtract 4 and divide 2.
A light.
So it's just right there at the end.
Depends. I mean, sometimes like 20 and then sometimes, no, like, 20, and sometimes like.
This is the only one with like a little.
Okay, so I'm with you here. What you did here
You're slowing me down.
does not look incorrect,
Yeah, slow Cam down.
but you still need to solve that.
Yeah.
What I did, just as an option, is I got a common denominator here and wrote that as one big fraction.
You want help?
Okay, yeah.
And the reason why I thought to do that is because if I could make this be a fraction, the only time a fraction equals 0 is if the numerator equals 0. So then it's finished with 4 here.
Oh, okay, I see.
So, I'm not saying what you're doing is wrong, but yours might be a little stickier to finish, where
Yeah,
mine was
that
just
makes
set the numerator.
Okay, thank
But
you.
yeah, you gotta get this one big fraction.
We get
Can I see what you did? Which one's wrong?
Can you show me how to do it?
What would be different? Oh.
Here, that one.
I will say, I think you should go this way you're trying to think this a lot of but just as backup. Way back here on the setup, I just got a common denominator that was directed as one big fraction. The benefit of that is the time a fraction equals 0 is just when the numerator equals 0. So that makes my solving a lot simpler. So I don't think you did anything wrong, I don't know, but if you get stuck, you might try that approach.
Integrated to get FFX, so we'll have. Yeah. We do this slow.
what's the derivative, or what can you take the derivative of to get secant squared? So the derivative of tangent something is secant squared something, right? Alright. So if I took the derivative of this, it's going to be multiplied by 3 because it changes. There you go. Yes. You were thinking chain rule derivative when you were actually integrating, so you were trying to undo that. Make that a 1/3, and then it's going to be 1.
What's your calculus? I can fall asleep the night before. That's a day before the eclipse. The day before the eclipse. We would soon have to fall asleep.
You jumping around. Just like real AP tests, you gotta make an educated guess.
Well, you can still go back, right?
As long as you have time. Finish? This was the one I had to look.
Yeah, it's multiplied by X.
After taking the
I was just trying to do slow, so I was getting like negative by 30. I knew it was wrong because it was the last one.
Yeah, it's because there was an average acceleration, not average acceleration.
That's tricky.
Yeah.
Oh, I wonder why he's at. It's probably safer. Yeah.
The one good thing is
Because he would have told us he was missing. So he's probably staying on it. Yeah.
Now, I know there's only a couple of you guys finished, but as the rest of you get close to finish, or you do finish, you really should highlight the parts of the notes that you had to look back at several times. You won't have that quick summary of which method to take on the real AP exam, so while it's fresh in your head, make some notes. Write yourself some reminders, highlight the things you still need to ingrain in your brain.
So like on the
reading guides?
Yeah.
Oh. And then the assignments that you today, right?
Yeah. So which one is it?
Probably Friday, if it says, I don't know. Anytime. I just emailed him and told him I haven't done tonight. Well, Gavin started, so I'm not going up for it. Yeah, it's true. Hour 30
No,
minutes.
Verona.
Or just hour.
And then we went to
You just
my
have
hotel.
time. Yeah.
See, that's one.
I tried to give her a first week on it.
Alright, so like if you didn't do it right.
It's like a 9-hour difference. Oh, I check out.
AJ, do you,
I think it's
follow the
Wednesday.
Wednesday? Have you seen what I posted? Yeah.
No.
Oh, it looks like the,
Still like
okay, you follow. I used to not, and I was like, and I missed points, and I was like, shoot. No, I didn't.
much weight, you could just like take that.
Yeah, it's easier, you just find it, you don't really have to read that hard, you just kind of skim. AJ, did you ever read that day that he was gone for the field trip? The reading, yeah, did you read those? You probably should, because you said that's like most of the class. Yeah, I know. I haven't done that yet either. Tomorrow's an 8A, right? Okay. So I got the, I guess.
I'm very old for this grade. I lie about this.
July 31st, like the video puts out on March.
Oh yeah, no, there's some July. Early September, mid September actually, but.
I have the exact middle point in the year.
Yeah. So my brother was born on December 7th. Which is Pearl Harbor Day. I was born on 9/12.
My mom was born the day after Christmas. Wait, no, not the day after. 3 days after Christmas.
I was born the day after that.
That is. Technically, the good is choosing Asper's birthday.
Oh, what did we do so much fun?
That looks
You would never forget me.
So it says average
I
value.
would never forget my birthday, ever.
so they would have.
Well, here's if you just integrate, it's gonna give you total value. If you integrate and then divide by the difference between them, it gives you the average.
And you're staying with the
Right,
first.
okay, so now I'm with you. But since this makes it a little bit easier here, 3/2 is just, well, the 3/2 is outside of the integration also. Because that's gonna leave 1/5. Why would I integrate? And then when I plug in 0 into it, it's gonna get all right.
Every time you speak to.
Every time.
Somebody just left my things I could love that.
No, you have to do it for you have to
Stop.
Well, it turns all the stuff.
for this second.
Yes, I think you just need to consider format 3/2 out.
Stop before you disturb the one person on the table who's actually being productive. Well, still being productive.
So it's just, it's like.
Okay.
There was 19 seconds just on it.
Yeah, I was saving that.
Okay, so the derivative is a function because it could be bigger than 2. The derivative just means 4. So I started off with this. I went into that
There's
1/3.
differently, like.
Then when x is the value, what does y have to be at least?
If you press like the first 3 or 6 buttons, depending on the microwave, it will automatically
It
put
starts off
that number of
1,
minutes.
3,
Yeah.
and
And
if it's
start
going up to at least 2,
I have a-
then at 2 it's gotta be at least 5.
It's a dial.
Okay, so
that you
2 5s is
turn to
another 20.
increase the time.
At least.
Yeah, the express
So
code thing, I
at 3
think.
it has to be at least.
The express code label on the top of
When X
that
is
button
3.
says that the first 6 minutes is officially gonna start the microwave.
Time cook.
Yeah, that's how you
So it's
do
going up
it.
at least 2.
Don't worry about it.
And then
Don't.
when X is
No,
4,
just leave it.
Y has to be a little. So that's how I thought. I mean, it's going up at least 2 every single time, so we can keep up with the bottoms. Yep.
No. Well, that's metal and you just get a flammable material. Don't start going what is called turn into plasma.
Number 2. No. This.
Don't microwave that, that's metal.
This.
Oh, you had.
Okay, it's very sturdy. It's the wall is here too, apparently. This?
Wait, so you.
So.
Don't microwave unless they're food. Don't microwave food unless it's microwave stuff too.
I just divided by the median. You did it by school. And then I guess you just integrated.
One other thing to keep in mind with our last 10 days or so, if you guys feel like this is hard or it's a little bit of a struggle, that is normal. I'm not trying to pick out practice and assignments that I think everybody is going to think is easy. That would be a waste of everybody's time. I'm trying to pick out stuff that I know you need more practice on and you need to think about again. So if this isn't the easiest thing you've ever done, that's completely fine. I realize that you're not quite there yet on these question types. I'm just hoping that you feel better about them after this practice. So, and that'll be true for the rest of the stuff we do too. I'm not trying to pick out stuff that everybody's great at. I'm trying to pick things to help you grow.
Because they started to read, I saw that, and then I saw that just appeared.
I don't know. Continue it. I don't think. I think one of the teachers is pretty sure.
They think this can be used as an option, it's just a threat. If I remember right?
No, there's also. Yeah. Did you do that? What do you think of it?
It's like a classroom, did you find it?
No, I found.
Did you get
What is that?
I've got a few of your mini quizzes I can pass back to you guys. The ones that are not makeup forms and the ones that my AA class first taken. So, of course, if you missed any of these, this is stuff you're supposed to know, so don't throw it away. Just keep it in your binder.
Yeah. Or you were what's point-based on it. Or not point-based, but like social. It's kind of insane how easy it is. No, I mean we do analysis, but it's like the easiest analysis. You get this? Yeah. You drove it out there.
The sticker or the fact that it's a mini quiz that you missed?
1 minute late.
Not today. It was just Tuesday.
Lecture hall.
Okay, I think that's all the mini quizzes I can pass back at this point. I do have, actually that's pretty much all of yours, if you're here.
I did not, no, I did not read that. Why is it holding my
Huh?
What would you mean?
No, that's right. I wasn't there for the origin of microwavable Joe.
Wait. I heard it.
I figured out what to make me a Jack. Actually says. Is it better? That's probably better. Can I do that? Yeah, that's right. There's a status on the back. Just from suspension of health so I was there for the origin of microwavable Joe. But I am the reason that everyone is named microwavable now. So a while back, I got told that Ryan and Gene were fighting over the title of microwavable, and so I swooped in and took it before you were in cadet. And Ryan and I fought a verbal war. We got to be persistent, so I offered compromise and we ended up like it was gods. So I took the skies as my golden pigeon. And Ryan took the keys and the original truck and she was the pigeon bear, which I go to the invisible rocks. After that, people just kind of started knowing how it was. Todd is the cosmic microwave. This is microwavable gas. That is microwavable live. Big is microwavable. Maurice is microwavable rice. Nicholas is from microwavable.
Hello. Hey, good, how are you? I've got a class, I'm not lecturing, but okay, William Beck is not here today, but I can send Mo. Okay, bye.
Just sit.
Her office is right against Dr. Kelly's office. You know where that's at? Close, yeah, okay. So it's by the basketball gym, but you gotta like go down the hallway and before it's the corner, it's the last one. Okay. Yeah, she said send you down there, so.
There he is. Yeah, we could really change this, not, you can't really microwave it. A ridiculously high amount of microwave radiation, you wouldn't find in your commercial microwave. We love the microwave because there's
It's a net for a cylinder.
I know I'm holding it.
You guys finished with the other one too? I found this one. I gave it out a couple classes ago. I just haven't given you much time to work on it. No, it's called Lisa. You know you love Lisa. That's what it says on the top left. Yeah.
It was all of us.
More I can help with.
Help me with 13.
Mental health patients just sleep.
13.
I don't think I got 100.
I'll get it on the weekend.
Yeah, 13 was probably the longest question for me. So one thing you have to do is you need to integrate the second derivative,
Yes.
solve for C,
I don't know if that hit the critics.
so that you can get the first derivative.
Stop it. Get some sleep.
And you can integrate the first derivative from 1 to E, but it says average, so you also need to divide by E minus 1. Yeah.
So I just have it. Okay.
Is that enough to get started at least?
Yeah, thank you.
I wake up like 3
Because you want to call it.
The only reason I would do is if I mean, no, you're right. You're right.
Okay, I sleep lightly, but I cannot be forced to.
I can be forced to.
I slept through multiple earthquakes. Like where I just remember mom walking down the hallway, it instantaneously wakes me up.
Okay, I woke up,
Yeah, I know what you
I
did
had
wrong there.
conversations in my sleep
Somebody else does
and not remembered them when I woke up.
Okay, the derivative of tangent something
Every night.
is secant squared something,
But the moment I
right?
get slightly chilly, I wake up.
So actually, let me up here.
Well, actually, I don't really. I wake up and I just
Derivative
like
of
to go
tangent
and put the
3x.
nearest object above my body. So that I
Secant
can
squared
last
3x
night.
times 3 is the chain rule.
Right, so it's so one.
So it's 1/3, not times 3. You're taking a chain rule here when you should be
AC
doing
was running a little bit
anti-derivative.
high and also on
So that
cool,
makes
so it won't.
your answer 9 times smaller than
outside.
instead of multiplying by 3, you should have been divided by 3.
Only 2 reasons.
Cold. I'm usually not that, sensitive to my sleep. If it's like, it's like below 60, it's fine.
Your answer or not gonna work.
Whenever I sleep, but my sound, the like, the ears just so
Okay, so they gave me something after this thing to take off my head device. So, take the derivative of that, just set it off.
Take a little next to
that. So
He's a good like 3 feet away.
I don't usually listen to music when I sleep, especially if it's a lyrical, it will wake me up. But I did once, one song on Baker's Home.
Don't put a song on.
No, but it was funny, it was like 3 in the morning, and I was,
a lot of people have been getting it through.
staying at my aunt's house in the same room as my dad's girlfriend.
Yeah, you're on there.
I so just had to.
I mean, you can almost tell just based
I
on
did,
this, if you let this 3 divide
She
that
woke
out.
me up because she was
I got a rock
so,
anyway. And I
like,
took it all wrong.
angsty teenager, actually, wasn't it? Yeah, she sounded like a rebellious teenager. Like she was gonna tell me it wasn't a phase. So I got so annoyed with that, but I left, and I went to go sleep in the living room instead. So my dad was sleeping in the living room. He was snoring like an empty. He was snoring like a vacuum.
You just call for that, Steve, so you did that part first. I did the same thing.
So there was no other option but to sleep, so I was stuck in
You had the full first
the room with Miss Emily
So
Davis
grade, you keep the first
Ray.
derivative, give you the average rate of
So I just kind of sold it to me in the dining room for a few minutes. I did, because the dining room doesn't have any chairs and have backs. Only stools. Because it's not really a dining room. The dining room is kind of full. They have like a kitchen dining room common. The kitchen's on one side of the kitchen's on one side of the island, and the other side of the island has like a counter with 2 stools and a high table with 2 high chairs.
Probably related rate of change.
It's weird, it's in the museum.
My house is above,
There is
so
a
you
dining room.
opposite and adjacent, so tangent,
Table in the foyer with
like a
chairs.
tangent,
That's fine,
tangent.
yes. That's not the point. Point is, I slept in the kitchen
Like
dining room
derivative all
area
sides
for
with respect
like
to time.
a solid couple of minutes, and then I remembered, wait, I have headphones.
Same way you do all derivatives.
Sleeping in headphones is like most comfortable.
Okay, well, are you with me still there?
I got it.
I looked at my music and I was like, I know if I put on something lyrical, I will wake up.
Okay, wait, maybe,
And I know
I thought it was
something
so.
recently hooked on the NFL soundtrack at the moment, so like, you know what? Screw it.
Well, he's saying it's actually
I
here.
really thought about it for another moment. It's not that.
No, it
That's
isn't.
wrong.
Unless you know the ratios.
And then I went back to sleep.
The angles.
And then I was my stepmom and dad. Yeah, it's supposed to.
Yeah, so the problem is, Pythagorean theorem. This is the side, and the rate of change is the side, rate of change is the side, rate of change is the side. None of that's ever gonna help you figure out how to aim. You need to, no wait, you already done, like, you don't change your answer on
I
here.
don't
want-
remember
on
anything about
this.
the dream, I just remember that there was music.
Like, I'm saying if I help you with this, I don't want you to like,
And I
change it
couldn't
and make it
even
look
see.
right. I need to see this.
No matter how many tabs I closed, or how many
That's
tabs
not how many
Okay, but I'm saying you could do,
When I woke up in the morning.
I don't have the question memorized,
Didn't get enough
but I
sleep.
think you could do a tangent equation. Don't you know 1 or 2 of these values or something?
You take the derivative of both.
Derivative of this would be this, but you took the derivative of theta with respect to time, so you need a theta prime. And then plug in your number there, take the derivative of that with respect to time and plug it in too, and then it should be one answer. You just started off with the wrong geometry. Pythagorean theorem helps you with side lengths, but it doesn't help you with angles. So the total equation is going to have an angle to solve for it.
No, wait.
All right, guys, we are down to about 4 minutes here, and it looks like I will need to make a slight adjustment to this again. So, I know a lot of you finished this 126. It's great if you finish it for homework, but you don't have to finish it for homework. I'm going to back off of that again, only because I want you to focus on the mock exam. I'm already giving you a 45-minute homework assignment, so I will give you a little bit more class time before I expect you to have this finished. Now, if you feel like you're quite a bit behind everybody else, you might want to try to do a few more questions so that you have less eventually, but the only thing you have to do for homework is the second part of the mock exam. Again, there will be no late credit on that. I can't do late credit on it. You need to do it.
I actually submitted mine, so I was wondering if like you could phone submit it possibly?
Oh,
I
man.
thought we were just doing the 30 questions, and I was like, well, how's he gonna grade this if he can't see it? So
That's a fair question.
so I just submitted it because I thought that was what we're supposed to do.
Have you tried to open it up and see if it will let you keep trying it? I'll be honest, I'm really bad with AP Classroom,
Yeah.
so I don't know if that's even possible.
I don't even get these ones this year. Any of my classes.
I don't have a due date on there, but
Pick an answer you know.
I don't know if I just guess. I'm just gonna
Just a minute. You'll find out.
Let's love that's 45 questions.
okay, I think I can figure it out. I found a thing that gave me some directions,
You got a 4 with 45.
but it might take me a few minutes to figure it out. AP Classroom.
What do you say? He doesn't know who I am. Did you get the one with some and limited media? Or the down in the last 3? Oh man, it's so
I'll keep playing with it. I should be able to figure it out based on these directions. It's just I'm a little slow. So try again in like 10 minutes. I'll hopefully be able to get it done by then. Have a good day.